Well, we've been around for a little more than 5 years here at Rebel News. If I counted up all the videos we've done, probably around 15,000 by now. There have been many moments I've been very proud of our journalistic coverage, our editorial stances, but I must tell you, and I've thought about this quite a bit, that if I had to choose the one moment of sheer joy and exuberance and vindication and thrill and surprise, the highlight of the 5 years here for me, it was that day in October last year, that Monday afternoon, when we rushed to the Federal Court of Canada to get an emergency injunction stopping Justin Trudeau from banning our reporters from covering the leaders' debate. And against all odds, against an army of overpaid Trudeau lawyers, 5 of them, we prevailed. I was stunned. It was the validation of everything we believed in here, telling the other side of the story, being independent journalists, and our belief that the establishment, the media party, the political media industrial complex was wrong and we were right. Even if everyone said we were wrong, we were still right. The Federal Court of Canada said so. And the 2 men who did the heavy lifting for us that day were young lawyers that we had just retained 3 days earlier, Aaron Rosenberg and David Elmela, who had worked all weekend to give us that victory. Well, since then, David and Aaron have done more work for us. And as you may know, about a week ago, we filed another similar lawsuit against Justin Trudeau's Privy Council Office, or PCO as it's sometimes called, for much the same as we did last year. Back then our journalists were banned from attending the leaders' debates. Now our journalists are banned from asking questions of Justin Trudeau at his daily press scrum. Well, we have some updates, a small update on the case, and joining us now via Skype is our friend and lawyer, Aaron Rosenberg. Aaron, great to see you again.
Oh, so nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, come on. I mean, you and your legal partner, David Elmela, were the architects of our greatest victory. And so I know this is also a long shot case. I won't deny that. But the case you filed a week ago gives me some hope that we can bust down more of Trudeau's censorship. Why don't you give our viewers a 1-minute recap of what that lawsuit says?
That's right. So, this is a very, very interesting, unique application to the federal court, where we're, on behalf of Rebel News, we're asking for the court to review the decisions, or lack thereof, by the Privy Council in their management of Trudeau's morning show. That's the daily COVID-19 press briefings that are made every day by the Prime Minister. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the court to say, this process is unaccountable, it's not transparent, and media outlets like Rebel that are not members of the elite press gallery are being denied access to the Prime Minister during an unprecedented time when Canadians need to be informed by their federal leaders about what's happening with this problematic pandemic. And so, Rebel really has no choice. They're not being offered the opportunity to ask these questions, just like in the leaders' debate where access was completely denied. In this case, Rebel folks can call in, but they're not being asked any questions. They're not able to ask any questions, and thus there really is no access for Rebel and for other like institutions.
Yeah, it's incredible. In our last lawsuit, the one where you and David were victorious in October for us, we were joined in court by our friends at True North, Andrew Lawton, Candace Malcolm, Anthony Fury, good folks over there. Andrew wound up getting in along with us. They're not even trying anymore. Blacklock's another independent news agency in Ottawa, doesn't even try. Even our alumnus, Brian Lilly, doesn't even try. There's so many conservative-leaning journalists who don't even bother to call in because they're never put through. We have called more than 20 times, never put through once, but other journalists get on almost every day.
That's right.
That's not random, and it's not a process that's basically blackballing anyone who might ask a tough question. And by the way, Aaron, I want to let you know that I don't believe any court should command Justin Trudeau to have to talk to me, but I ought to be able to put a question that he could ignore or swat away. I'm not looking for a court to say be Ezra's best friend or be the rebel's best friend. But if this is a bureaucracy, a nonpartisan civil service that is handling this phone thing, they should be neutral as opposed to partisan. They should not discriminate between left-wing reporters, right-wing reporters, Toronto reporters, Vancouver reporters. That's what irks me, is that Trudeau looks like he's making the civil service into a wing of the Liberal Party.
You know what? And you raise such an important point, is that not only is this the bureaucracy, the Privy Council office and the clerk it's part of its mandate. Its guiding principle is to be nonpartisan, to provide nonpartisan advice and administrative assistance to the Prime Minister. And so that's exactly correct, is that this type of nonpartisan agency should be held accountable for the manner in which they're administering this type of process. This is a critical process right now, and yet all indications point to this being an arbitrary, capricious process that is by no means nonpartisan. And, thankfully, we have groups like Rebel that are willing to step up, and we're certainly delighted to be of assistance in this process.
Well, thank you for that. Now, we filed the lawsuit about a week and a half ago, and if I recall, the government had 1 week in which to reply. Now, I think we did get a reply. I haven't looked through it carefully, so I'm sort of hearing this from you at the same time you're telling all our viewers, which is good, because we crowdfund your legal fees, so I want our viewers to know pretty much as I know. What document has the federal government filed with the court in response to our lawsuit last week?
So they've filed what they're required to file, which is a notice of appearance. That document is very short. It says that they are responding to this application. They recognize they've been served with Rebel's notice of application that commences, it's the originating process, that commences this proceeding. They've seen it, they recognize it, and they will be responding to it. And now the ball's in our court. So we can talk about those steps next.
Mm-hmm. So serving the government, that's basically when you tag them, you're it, we're suing you. That's the starter pistol for litigation. That's tough in a time of a pandemic, but they acknowledge that we did tag them. I think you sent it to about 5 different email addresses and sent it electronically, and you did all sorts of things. So you got through, and they said, all right, you tagged us. So now it looks like we're going to be in this virus lockdown, and Trudeau's going to be in his pretend quarantine, his self-hiding, probably for another month. I want to get in there with our reporters, Cian Bexty, David Menzies, Sheila Gunn-Reid. I might even throw a few questions in myself. So I want this to happen fairly quickly. Is there a process? I don't want a hearing in 90 days or 6 months when we're all done. I remember during the debates thing, we went really quickly. Is there a way we can get some ruling or some hearing before the pandemic rules of hiding Trudeau from reporters are done?
Well, certainly that's something we've been discussing, and happy to have those conversations offline. But all I can say is that there is an opportunity, there are mechanisms to bring this matter forward on an expeditious, urgent basis. That's something we can do. Whether the court will allow it, that's a different story. But certainly, this is something that we can pursue, and we can try to bring it before the court so that the court can have the opportunity at least to decide whether they're going to make a ruling on this fairly quickly.
That's a very diplomatic way of saying, Ezra, ask me these questions privately where we're not tipping the government off to our strategy. You're so right. I just want to share the update with our viewers that we did tag them. The government acknowledges we've been tagged, and now the fight is on. Well, listen, very well answered, my friend. And I feel like we're in good hands with you. And I think we're also putting the government on notice that their era of getting away with little indignities towards independent press, little petty censorships, that era is over. For 4 years, not a single journalist stood up to Trudeau and his high-handedness. And why would they? They're all on the take from the $600 million media bailout. But you and your colleague David showed last October that we can actually fight and win. So I will have that private conversation with you, and I promise our viewers that we will continue to hold Trudeau government and every government of every stripe to account. And if you want to read our originating notice, our application that Aaron mentioned, you can find it at letusreport.com. And by the way, if you want to help chip in to cover our legal fees, you can do that at letusreport.com too. Last word to you, Aaron. I think that in Canada, free speech is being rolled back slowly but surely, and the normal voices that would sound the alarm, they're silent. It's like the watchdog was given like a nice juicy bone to nibble on by a robber so he wouldn't bark at a home invasion. I mean, my analogy is all the media watchdog groups that would normally be squawking, well, they're all on the take from Trudeau now. So it's pretty hard to squawk when, you know, Trudeau's giving you, in the case of Post Media, $140,000 a week, for example. Pretty tough to bite the hand that feeds. CBC won't do it. I think it falls to us and True North and a few other independents.
Well, you know, I think what your organization has done a really great job at is lifting the veil on the challenges here in Canada with respect to the independence of our press. And organizations, you know, news networks like yourselves and others ask tough questions. That's what we should do. That's what, you know, we need a robust press. And yet what we're seeing is a prime minister that's being coddled, that's being protected. And, you know, you're right to be asking these questions. We must be asking these questions, and we must continue to do so. And if that means resorting to the courts, that's fine. Let's fight it out.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm glad that you and your colleague are on our side. And I just want to point out for our viewers that a couple months ago, there was a budget lockup in the province of Alberta, which of course has the Conservative Premier Jason Kenney. And they wanted to keep out a group called Progress Alberta, which is not a real journalistic group. They're a union front group. Like, they're not genuine journalists. They're press release writers. But still, in my view, they ought to be able to go into a budget lockup as long as they follow the rules. And the government of Alberta refused to let them in. So I instructed our Edmonton lawyers to share our legal research with Progress Alberta to help them make an emergency application to get into the budget lockup up there. Now, obviously, Progress Alberta, as the name implies, is a left-wing front group. They don't like me, I don't like them. But I like them having freedom of speech, because the thing about freedom of speech and freedom of the press is it's the gift you've got to give your opponent if you want it for yourself. And if Progress Alberta, who I disrespect ideologically, if they have a win for open government and more free press, that sets a legal precedent that I then can benefit from. Now, they were extremely ungrateful and they were as bad as you would expect. I don't even care, because we helped increase the wiggle room for freedom just a tiny bit there. And I say that, Aaron, because this is not just a Trudeau thing. This is everyone, we're all in this together. We all need freedom of speech. And you don't know what you got till it's gone, by the way. And I don't want to lose that. Last word to you, Aaron.
Yeah, well, isn't it that old great thing where I don't like anything you have to say, but I will fight to the death to protect it. And I see that's what you guys are doing. I live by that principle, and I just think that's so important. That is a fundamental.
Well, it's great to have you on the team. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll continue our legal strategizing off camera so Trudeau doesn't get wind of it.
Thank you so much, Ezra.
All right, you take care. Well, that's our legal eagle, Aaron Rosenberg, who was one of the two lawyers who got us into the leaders debate last October. I will continue my conversation with him out of earshot of the Prime Minister's office and the Privy Clerk's office. Please go to letusreport.com. I want you to read what Aaron and his colleague drafted. It's a very interesting lawsuit. It's only, I think, 10 pages or so, and it's in fairly plain English. And if you want to help us pay for this, I mean, I don't know if you saw the news, but when we fought that first round in October, our legal bill was $18,000. The federal government put 5 lawyers on it. They billed taxpayers $131,000. They spent, 7 times more? And we still beat them. But I do need your help, so go to letusreport.com. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.